Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this new item patch hero tier list. I wanted to play a lot on the new patch before making this tier list to make sure that I had some decent opinions. Of course, there is a lot of huge changes and not everything is uncovered. We also already had a fight night last Wednesday where we learned a lot about what the pros picked, and we're going to try to dissect what the power level is of every hero in the game. I'm going to try to make it representative of all skill tiers, maybe with a slightly more weight towards the higher elo, but it's not for pro specifically. Okay, first I want to say is that this is probably the worst patch Bebop has ever seen. His animations are clunky, everybody has more health. He relied on doing burst damage both as gun and bomb. They also added an imbue on Echo Shard and a longer cooldown. So the hero is probably the worst he's been. And I know some of you are going to be like, you're just saying that because you're a Bebop main. Actually, I played almost no Bebop after these changes. And I also got this to show you guys. Bebop is at the very bottom of the win rates when looking at hero statistics on TrackLock. Anyway, without further ado, Bebop is back in D tier. He doesn't really feel fun to play right now. I can't lie. The combo feels more awkward. It's more delayed. It feels like very sluggish. The hook feels strange. I don't think Bebop has that much going for him of the new items compared to what a lot of other heroes get. So basically what happened was that because the Echo Shard is now an imbue, it means that in some situations you want to Echo Shard the hook instead of the bomb to get a second pick like late game. Now you have to imbue the bomb. Next up is Holliday. Holliday has been nerfed many times. She's still one of the most popular picks in pro play. She still has one of the best pick potentials, gank potentials, and some of the most mobility in the game as well. If you try to lane against a decent Holliday, you probably know that that's a horrendous experience. And even after the nerfs, I still think that Holliday is a top 5 hero in this game. And I think she belongs in S tier. She's hard to deal with. She kind of has everything going on for a good laning stage, good mid game, good pick potential, a lot of mobility, a lot of burst. I know it's a very fun hero to play, but I still think that she's too strong. Also, I think Holliday is one of the heroes that are benefiting from some of the new item changes. Like Veil Walker is very good on her now. She can also do like with Tank Buster plus Spirit Burn, for instance. I mean, Spirit Burn kind of works for every hero that does spirit damage, but yeah. Then you have Geist. Geist is also a hero that is like very much picked right now. One thing about this patch is that it's harder to get anti-heal. Like if you're gonna get good anti-heal, you have to pay like 6,400 souls for a Spirit Burn. Before, you could like get away with a Decay or maybe a Heal Bane or something. Now you have to invest much more heavily to stop these heroes. So the time to kill is now slower than it was before. And that benefits tanky heroes like Geist and Mo and Abrams. So I think Geist is also just right up there. You could also see that in Deadlock Fight Night. Both these heroes were very popular, very early picks. Okay, then we have Lash. I don't think Lash is that great right now. I think that one new item that really messes up Lash is Counterspell. So Counterspell is a new item that gives you the ability to parry spells. Now, whenever a Lash flies above you and is about to grab you, you can parry it and not get hit by it. So Lash is also another hero that he always like, I would say he always has some value because you can hit those big like wombo combo ults. But again, because everyone has more health too, I don't think Lash is in a great spot. I am going to check the win rates just for fun, but I do think, okay, he's got 52% overall. What if I click like Ascendant and above? Does he fall down? He's around 50. Okay. Either way, I think it's still a hero that is fun to play. But I feel like he belongs in B tier now. Okay, next up we have McGinnis. McGinnis didn't really get a lot of changes this patch, and she was previously known to be like the absolute worst hero in the game. But one thing that is really interesting is that because a few of the new items activate on like supports in general are much stronger now. And there's two reasons for that. One of them is just that there are more items, especially the healing tempo item, that favor playing on support playstyle. But the other thing is also that the soul change favors roaming supports more than before. So now you kind of want to have a carry just chilling in the lane to get more souls. Previously that wasn't a thing, so now it's more common to have these kind of like support roamer-esque strats. And especially if you're a roamer that also can farm jungles, then you're in a pretty good spot. So I do think that McGinnis is definitely much better than what she was in a previous patch where she was like by far the worst one. I think she is in B now. I think she is like in an okay spot. Then we have Mo and Krill. Mo and Krill is one of the heroes, like I said earlier, like Geist as well, where like you have a lot of health, you have a lot of sustain, and it's harder to get anti-heal. I think one thing that surprised me was that Mo and Krill wasn't really picked in Fight Night. I thought that would be one of the top contested heroes. He got banned in one of the matches, but I'm curious to why Mo and Krill wasn't really picked. And I have a theory, and I think it's because now with everyone having higher health pools, it's also harder to like get these picks. I think in general, like pick comps are harder to pull off right now, which is also why like I hear like Bebop is harder to play. And my theory is that Shiv and Abrams was prioritized over Mo because they have like better overall team fight potential, even though they have less pick potential. I still think he's A tier, but I kind of was surprised how like I thought he would be picked and played a lot more than he was. I still think he's a very fun hero. I also don't think that another thing is that I don't think like any of the new items really like may change Mo that much. He's always just been like a brawler that goes up in people's faces. One change is that if you really want to get super tanky, you can buy 12 green items if you want to, or you can buy like 10 purple items and do damage. So it is a hero where you can literally buy like any item and it will have some sort of impact. And I think he's a fun hero and he's probably good in most brackets, but I don't think he's quite up there with like Paradox, Geist and stuff. Next up we have Paradox. Not to sound like a broken record, but I feel like you all know where this hero is gonna go. I still don't understand how this hero has basically been untouched. Ever since they removed the charges from her wall, she's pretty much been the same. Paradox is one of the heroes that are like a real winner on this patch in terms of the items. First of all, because Express Shot gives you 150% damage boost on your next attack. It does work on the kinetic carbine. It doesn't mean your carbine fires twice, even though that's how Express Shot works. It just means that your carbine has a much higher damage output just with one gun item. She's one of the heroes that can instantly proc Spirit Burn from a long range, and Spirit Burn procs in a big AoE. So you can buy Express Shot, Tank Buster, and Spirit Burn on Paradox for a massive amount of burst damage. So she's in a really good spot. She also benefits from the Veil Walker being back as a 3k item. And she is where she always has been, one of the top heroes in the game. You'll notice how both of these heroes have mobility and excel at single target picking. It's basically what this guy dreams to be. Yeah, also, you can still do the Echo Shard bomb build with Paradox. Her bombs do so much damage late game because they scale with their own amp and with like a range bonus and stuff. You can deal out some serious damage. So even if you're not playing like an ult swap build, you can also do shit tons of damage. I don't know. I play Paradox a lot. I think she's great, but I think she's a little bit too strong. I also think Paradox is one of the heroes that really benefits from buying Trophy Collector in pubs. I know what you're gonna say, and it's been a very over-discussed topic where a lot of the pro players say that the Trophy Collector is a useless item. I think for most people that play ranked, if you play a roaming hero and there's a lot of fighting going on, I think you can greed for a Trophy Collector pretty early, maybe as your second 3k or something. It's definitely not an item you just buy on every hero and you just like think you're gonna get value. But on some heroes like Mo, Paradox, maybe Kelvin, I think it can work great. All right, next up we have Pocket. Pocket's one of the heroes that has like unlimited mobility. I think their laning stage is weaker now because the gun damage is very nerfed. But I do think there's some fun build opportunities now because you can like build up damage amp and hit Express Shot combos and stuff. But overall, I think that Pocket is overall a bit weaker than they were before. But I do think that now that it's harder to get anti-heal, the value of Affliction goes up as a big AoE damage over time spell. And Debuff Remover no longer removes ultimate effects. So the only item that can remove Affliction as of right now is Divine Barrier, which is 6.2k. Now, if you have a support in your team, they will usually buy that, but that's a pretty hefty investment to just deal with Pocket ults. So yeah, so I think that still puts Pocket in a good spot. I actually saw quite a few pro teams in Deadlock Fight Night also picked pocket pretty early. So I'm putting them in A tier. Next up, you have 7. 7 is in a pretty good spot because I think that there's a lot of interesting builds with 7. So like in general, this patch with all the new items, a lot of heroes have more build options. I think this benefits 7 because he can be played in numerous ways. He can be played like a mouse 1 carry, kind of Zergy style. Or you can play the more press 4, press unstoppable, press infuser, and watch everybody get hit by a lightning scroll. And 7 ult, so games now last longer, and that is why 7 ult is great at defending the base. It's great at defending objectives in general, and because games are lasting longer than before due to like the lower time to kill and a few other, I mean higher time technically, slower time to kill, you have more opportunities to hit these kind of big ults. So I do think that I think wombo combo ult playstyles are more relevant now than before, like Dynamo ult as well. And also 7 really benefits from some of the items in the new patch. I think lightning scroll is great on 7. He jumps up in the air, you pop your ult, and you can almost guarantee to hit a stun or 3 to 4 players or even more. The hero has an okay laning stage, okay jungling stage. Overall, pretty solid hero. I think I'm putting him right up here in A. He's also not too difficult to play, which is also why you'll see here on the hero stats that when you press normal, you'll see that he's actually the highest win rate overall, because in lower tiers, people struggle to deal with his ultimate, and he's one of the easier to learn hero. Like if a hero is hard to learn, they're never gonna have a high percentage win rate. Like Magician, you can see here, Magician is an awesome hero, but like you can tell, Holliday and Magician are both pretty hard to play, and they're all the way down here. Now Bebop is not nearly as hard to play as Holliday and Sinclair, so that's a bigger concern when you see him all the way down there. All right, next up we have Shiv. Shiv is another hero that is benefiting pretty well from this patch. I'm sure you guys, speaking of broken record, I'm sure a lot of you guys have experienced being in the wrong end of a Shiv. He benefits from like a lot of Shivs now, they rush Headhunter as like their first 3k items almost straight away. Gives them movement speed, sustain, and a decent amount of damage. This hero still has the most broken passive in the game, which is the bloodletting damage deferral thing. And when you're already like making the time to kill slower and you have someone like Shiv who can tank even more health, he becomes pretty hard to kill. And in this patch, you know, you can technically buy 12 green items if you want to. So a lot more build variety comes into play with this hero. There's like some fun things you can do with Witch Mail because it lowers the cooldown of the item whenever you get hit by a spell or something. Just overall a pretty solid character right now. Also very popular in Deadlock Fight Night, which is also good science. It means that the pros also think that this hero is pretty good. So I think I'm gonna put him here. I still think that 7 is like a more like just cookie cutter, straightforward, easy to play and everything. I think Shiv struggles a little bit more in lower elo especially. And when people do actually buy a lot of anti-heal, if they do, then he will struggle. Like he suffers against Infernus, he suffers against Spirit Burn. You're forced to buy a debuff remover every way. But by the way, debuff remover right now is a 3.2k item, is almost like a must to buy almost every game, because the two of the strongest items on this patch is Spirit Burn and the Decay. And both of those items can be instantly removed with debuff remover on a pretty short cooldown. And Decay is so powerful that it can actually proc Spirit Burn on its own. So you can get hit by a Decay, and then like a few seconds later, it also procs Spirit Burn, and you're just like running around dying. And you can barely move either because it keeps you in combat. Okay, next up we have Sinclair. Sinclair is an interesting hero. I think Sinclair will always have a low win rate. He's got a weird gun. He's like slow and clunky. His abilities are weird. His ultimate is to steal someone else's ultimate. A lot of people just play melee builds with Echo Shard and stuff. There's a lot of like things that can go wrong with this hero, but it's usually a pilot issue. I think if you think about the higher potential of this hero, I think it's one of the strongest heroes in the game. I think an interesting thing is that when you steal someone else's ult, you have a shorter cooldown on it than what they have. And he's really hard to catch. And for some reason, he can still TP out of a slowing hex. I mean, out of a silence. If he's already put his copy down, he can still teleport to his copy while being silenced. But I will say Sinclair is an excellent example of how you can't just look at win rates because it's a really hard hero to pilot. That also makes it hard for the devs to balance him. But if you try to lane against a magician who knows how to play the bolts, the vexing bolts, it's a pretty miserable experience. There are quite a few one-tricks on the leaderboard or on the ladder who basically every single game they will take down the Guardian between 3 to 5 minutes into the game. And you're actually happy that they take down the Guardian. So maybe they will leave you alone and go bother someone else and you can start farming your solo in again. So yeah, I think this hero is, honestly pretty busted. But either way, I think these 3 heroes all suffer from the same thing. They are pretty hard to pilot, so the statistics are going to put them pretty low on overall win rates. But I think because they have a very high skill cap, they kind of get away with murder a little bit. I do want to check win rates just to be sure. On normal, let's see Sinclair and Holliday all the way at the bottom and Paradox just down there. Do you see what I mean? 47%, 45, 44. But for instance, if you check something like Infernus, then suddenly you'll have, let me see. Suddenly they're much higher up. See, Paradox is 48, that's a little bit higher. Where is Holliday? Am I losing it? Okay, you know what? Maybe this is just a skill issue. I don't know. Or maybe it needs to be more organized play. I do think that like when you play a pick hero, that of course it's beneficial in organized play more. I don't think any of these heroes can just solo kill someone really easily, but they can pick someone off. So I am curious if that's the thing where like in some pub games, it's just not like it needs communication. I feel like a hero like Seven is like the reason why he has such a high win rate. He just runs around and presses forward when it suits him. Another example is also Wraith. She has a lot of solo kill potential with her ult, plus she can TP out. So she will naturally have a high win rate because you can solo queue and still be fine. You don't need to really rely on your teammates with a hero like that. Next up, we have Vindicta. I think Vindicta has gotten a little bit worse. I think she's still okay, but I think she is one of those heroes that is kind of struggling with really big health pool targets. I think because like the time to kill is slower and it's pretty meta to have like pretty beefy frontline comps. I think she might like struggle a little bit more than she used to. I'm not sure, but like I don't know how you guys feel, but I've definitely noticed a lot less Vindicta than before. She used to be very strong. One thing I also noticed that she used to always be picked in pro tournaments too. And then she also can't use Lightning Scroll, which is true because I don't think Lightning Scroll works on abilities with charges. So I'm gonna put her in B tier. I still think she's all right, but probably here. But I definitely think she's a lot weaker than what she used to be. Then we have one of the big winners of this patch, which is Vyper. I think Vyper is really benefiting from a lot of the new items. One of them being the fact that you can now have more than 4 weapon items without flex slots. Like now all the slots are flex slots. I think this benefits Vyper because when she's sliding, she doesn't have to worry about ammo capacity because you have infinite ammo while sliding. A lot of the items give her like a very strong damage boost. You have, for instance, armor piercing rounds is like a good late game combo. She's also one of the few heroes that really just like absolutely shreds objectives. So as a split pusher, she can be really good, and late game, if you buy Unstoppable, it's almost impossible to catch her as well. So I still think that Vyper is one of the big winners this patch. I'm not 100% sure exactly why she's so much better this patch, but you can really feel it when you get in the game for her. Also, interestingly, like her laning stage isn't actually too bad either. Like the execute poison thing is better than you think. Also, interestingly, one build I ran into the other day was a Spirit Vyper with Veil Walker. So she would basically have Tank Buster, Veil Walker, Boundless Spirit, and she would just stealth in on targets that are like slightly low, shoot one mag into them, apply the poison, stone form them, and then just watch them die from like 50% health. I personally think that Vyper is actually up here. Or maybe, you know what, just because it's also all ranks, I'm putting her here because I do think that she struggles she struggles more than 7 across. Like if this was purely high rank, I would put her higher, but I think the fact that like it's also a pilot issue and it's a high skill cap, I'm putting her slightly lower. Okay, Warden. One thing that is interesting about Warden is that he has one of the highest base gun damage in the game. Now there's a new item called Mercurial Magnum, which makes your bullets do spirit damage, and it's based on the base damage of your gun. So naturally, there's a pretty big synergy with Mercurial Magnum and Warden, especially because he already bought Quicksilver Reload for his Alchemical Flask every game. So he really benefits from a lot of these new items. I think he also benefits from Spellslinger, which is the item that lowers reload speed and increases fire rates whenever you cast an ability, because you can just like spam your flask or spam flask plus fleet foot to keep those stacks up. So I do think that puts like Warden is definitely one of like the winners in terms of like getting to use a lot of the new items. Warden is all the way up there in Infernus. What about normal? Does he drop a lot in normal? Okay, I see. So he's actually pretty high overall, which is pretty interesting. But I guess that's also because that's also not necessarily a too complicated hero to pilot. I think he's kind of in the same boat as 7, where you're almost kind of guaranteed to have some sort of value from that hero. It's not too complicated. We'll put him next to 7. All right. Speaking of winners of this patch, we have Wraith. Wraith, who has a whopping 53% win rate overall. 58.5% win rate in Infernus, by the way. Yes, you heard me. 58.5. Just absurdly high. I think there's a few reasons to why Wraith is suddenly really good now. She's always been fine. Ever since back in the early Shadow Weave days when people started playing like assassination builds and stuff, she was always fine. She's great now because she's one of the few heroes that can easily roam around the map and get solo kills really easily. She's really good now because you can rush Mercurial Magnum and Rapid Recharge on her, and she will basically never have to reload. Every time she tosses a card, it reloads her mag and gives her extra spirit damage on her bullets, which also stacks with her full auto. And then she still can TP out after. So overall, I think Wraith is probably the big winner of this patch. You see her, like her pick rate has gone up by 22% as well. She was also very popular in Deadlock Fight Night. And I think she finally, for the first time in my tier lists, Wraith is at the very top. Very, very top. All right, then we have Abrams. Abrams has always been a pretty solid pick. I think the only like bad thing about Abrams is usually that it's a very awkward hero to fall behind on because he's kind of forced to get into the fray. He's forced to like charge in, stun. He's like a hero that is really good in organized play. His ult is great for stealing the mid-boss crystal. He's got like, there's a new melee item now that I didn't mention before either called Crushing Fists, which also makes melee builds even more powerful. And Abrams is definitely one of like the favorite melee build characters in the game. And he's been like solid for a very long time. I do think he like suffers a little bit from the reduced burst damage because he kind of like, he really used to excel on just like charging, pinning someone against the wall, hitting a melee and a few heavy shots and they die. If you kind of outlast that first initial burst, then he doesn't really have that much more. Like he will struggle against someone like Infernus, for instance, which is why I feel like he's a little bit weaker now than someone like Shiv, for instance, who has more like constant pressure. He has like a bunch of low cooldown abilities. He has a knife he can spam. He can dash back and forth and stuff. So I'm putting Abrams in the top of B tier. I still think it's a good hero, maybe close to A, but I do think that he struggles a little bit more now than the other patches. I will say though, one thing I really like about this patch overall is just that like items have been like cleaned up a lot. Like items have more specific niches. Like there's specific tank items, there's specific damage items, there's specific support, healing items, all these things. Before it was like half of the items had like 4 to 5, 6 different stats on them. And I really prefer the way it is now because it means that if you really want to play a tank Abrams, you can buy 10 greens if you want to, and you can have 6,000 health, and you can still stun lock people and stuff, but you won't deal a lot of damage. But you can kind of choose to cater to your own playstyle more. Or if you want to play an ult Haze with like no defensive abilities and just like absolutely shred people with your gun, that is also possible. And I do think that melee builds are pretty good right now, especially because of Crushing Fists too. So next up we have Calico. Calico to me is kind of hard to place because this is definitely another hero that kind of wants to get in, do a lot of burst damage and get out. But the problem is when everybody has 30 to 40% more health, then getting in, doing your combo and getting out isn't necessarily going to result in a kill. And I think that hurts this hero a lot more than other heroes. The Crushing Fists item is good for her dash because it counts as a light melee attack, so you can build up stacks and stuff. But I do think that she's a lot weaker overall than what she used to be. But she's still very annoying to deal with. One thing that is really good with Calico is that she's one of the best box farmers, and box farming is like really meta right now. And because of her cat form, you don't see her on the map and she just runs through boxes really quickly. So that's a pretty big buff to her in that regards. But I think like overall her presence is less scary than before. I'm actually curious what the overall win rates are in this hero because that isn't like that complicated of a hero. So right in the middle of the pack, kind of like I expected. And then when you go up here, okay, it's still the same thing. So that's the same way I was feeling. I feel like she is fine. She's right around here, right around as the top of B tier. One thing I will say, back to the argument about builds and how there are so many new items and so many fun builds. Calico is one of those heroes where you can go crazy on a cat build. Like you can buy Scourge, Spirit Burn, Escalating Exposure, all those goodies, and you can actually we actually have to try that. We actually have to try to do a cat maxing build just for the giggles because it is really funny. And then you can just like really like butter someone up with the escalating stacks. But the thing is, I made a cat maxing build ages ago. But back then it wasn't really that good because you didn't really have the items to do it. But now with Decay, Escalating, Scourge, all these items, it's like, yeah. All right, next up we have Dynamo. Dynamo, I've noticed, has like around a 52% win rate in almost every bracket now. And I was trying to like think like, why is Dynamo so much better right now than he is before? Because he was like slowly falling off over the last months or so. And then I watched the last Fight Night tournament and I noticed that Dynamo was picked quite a bit in the tournament too, which is pretty unlikely. Like there's been a while since Dynamo was actually prevalent. And I think one of the big reasons is how good support items and support playstyles are in general right now. It is because of the soul orb sharing change that we talked about, whereas it is actually beneficial to leave your carry alone in a solo lane to become stronger. And it's also because items like Healing Tempo that gives fire rate and movement speed to everybody that is affected by your healing. And then Dynamo has a big AoE heal. He also buys Healing Booster and Healing Health Nova. I think he like really benefits from that item. I think, yeah. Another thing is also Arcane Surge is now very cheap, and Arcane Surge is an item that gives massive value on heroes like Dynamo and Kelvin, where you get extra duration and extra range for like a very cheap cost. And because especially Dynamo probably wants that extra stamina anyway to get into position to do his ult, I feel like Arcane Surge versus Warpstone, you kind of have a really good black hole for just like 4,800 souls. So I do think that this is one of the stronger heroes this patch. I'm gonna put him right up here. I think he's in a really good spot. There's also overall, oh yeah, they also changed it so the stomp affects everyone's bullet damage. It used to be only his own, right? So that's also pretty big, the tier 2 on his stomp. So he's definitely, he also got a design rework, like his animations and stuff. And in general, pretty cool hero right now. I really like that, even though the game isn't completely balanced right now, which makes sense because you're just like dropping a full new item shop on top of the game, and it's gonna benefit a lot of heroes differently depending on how their abilities work. But I do think that, like, as you can also see from like a lot more people playing the game now than, let's say, a month ago or even a few weeks ago, it is pretty clear that this is like a good way forward for the game as a whole. It just like kind of takes time for the game to like cement itself as like balanced with all these changes. Then we have Grey Talon. Grey Talon used to be the absolute server admin in the last few patches. Tons of burst damage. He really relies on hitting his like 2 to 3 charge shots and maybe hitting a bird with the execute to get the spirit power scaling and stuff. I really feel like Grey Talon has fallen off a lot this patch. I think a lot of people feel like the game is more fun because Grey Talon isn't as strong. And it's hard, sometimes it's hard to like pinpoint exactly why. They also lowered the spirit scaling of charge shot a lot, but I don't think that Grey Talon is that great right now. He was also a hero that like would always buy Enchanter's Barrier and stuff like that. And I think that's also one thing you can say about Vindicta. Both Grey Talon and Vindicta really liked buying Combat and Enchanter's Barrier. And because those items don't exist anymore, I think that really hurts these guys because they have very low health pools. And if you buy Enchanter's Emblem now, it doesn't give you as much defensives as Enchanter's Barrier used to, because it's now based on also how high your health pool is. I think this might be sounding crazy, but I think I'm gonna put him all the way down in C tier, but I do wanna check the win rates just so I'm not like completely off, but I do feel like he's kind of struggling. Yeah, he is. This is 46% across the board. That's not great, okay. So I think a Grey Talon used to be better than Vindicta almost all the time. I don't think he is that anymore because Vindicta is better at dealing sustained damage. Like she can fly up in the air for quite a while and shoot. Whilst Grey Talon to me feels more like a burst character, and like just like with Bebop too, I feel like most burst characters are just struggling more. Okay, then we have Haze. Haze was a C tier in the previous tier list. She was like generally just like by far the weakest carry, struggling a lot. I think this patch she's definitely better. She definitely struggles a little bit still, but there is one item that is just like made for her, and that's the focus lens. So instead of actually 2 items, capacitor and focus lens. And the reason for that is as follows. Before, when you made a full, well, okay, like a while ago, Haze was really strong when her ult did spirit damage. And then Valve made her ult do bullet damage again. So now whenever you met a Haze with a ult build, you would just buy metal skin to counter it. Now you have some options. You can buy capacitor, which is an upgrade from Tesla bullets, which is an item that is very common to buy on Haze already to increase your farming speed. Capacitor dispels metal skin. And not only that, it dispels Viscous cube as well. So this is a huge buff to Haze because she really wants to burst down targets, and she can't do that if they are stuck inside a green cube or if they're metal skinned. So that alone is a massive buff. And the other one is Focus Lens. Focus Lens is a spirit item that gives fire rate and silences them. It's basically more or less a direct copy of an item called Orchid Malevolence in Dota. It silences you, and then you take bonus damage at the end of the silence. So this item is just made for assassin builds, and I think that bumps Haze up quite a bit. Not a lot, but I think she's right here next to McGinnis now. I've also personally had a lot of fun playing Haze recently. She does really struggle with health still, slightly less than before. I don't feel like Haze just gets one shot by a Shiv dashing in anymore like she used to, but I do think that she's one of the heroes you really want to buy Fortitude or something early game to be a little bit more tanky. I'd say that if this was a fun tier list, I'd probably put Haze as one of the top 5. But this is based on also performance, and that makes a big difference. And it's also one of the reasons why this hero is so popular. It's just fun to run around with like fast shooting guns and go invisible. So yeah. All right. And oh yeah, that's also a good point with Vindicta. She also has Stake, which is like a much better crowd control than the trap. I know the trap curses, but I feel like the usage for that is so limited compared to like, for instance, like You can even do like the Echo Shard stake builds with Alchemical Fire, and they are just like so annoying to deal with. And you're like, if you play against the Echo Shard stake build, you're forced to buy debuff remover, just like Bebop. I forgot to mention that earlier too. The reason why Bebop is really bad right now, there's also much more items to counter his bomb build. You can counterspell, parry either the bomb cast or the bomb explosion. You can buy Spellbreaker to take reduced damage from burst from spirit damage. And debuff remover is still very cheap. So yeah, it's really tough to play bomb this patch. Okay, then we have Infernus. Infernus is in a pretty good spot right now, in my opinion. Not only is it one of my favorite carries, if you ever watch my streams, you'll notice I've been playing a lot of Infernus recently with my tank Furnace build. Like I said, because the time to kill is slower and sustain is more prevalent, I think that means that this patch is perfect for this hero. His main goal is to build up debuffs on enemy targets and then out-heal the damage you take by soaking up all the spirit lifesteal from the afterburn. You do have to almost guarantee to buy debuff remover every game because people are going to come after you with decays and spirit burns and so on. But also because the new Infuser, by the way, used to be a 500 cost item, is now a 6,400 souls item. And it is the most fun thing ever when you're flame dashing through 4 people and you pop your Infuser, and then by people just running on top of your flame dash trail that you leave behind, you just like heal 2,000 health back. You just gotta make sure you pop your debuff remover first, because that's also why debuff remover is so good together with Infuser, because you make sure to remove the anti-heal right as you're about to pop your big healing ability. So yeah, I think Infernus is definitely one of the top carries this patch. Also, like, I've never been like a great carry player myself, so I think it's a pretty good sign that if I can play them decently well, that also means that he's in a pretty good spot. So I'm gonna put him right up here next to Warden and 7. I also think he really likes the new Spirit Burn item. Escalating Exposure is better than before as well. Overall, solid hero, fun hero. Also, in my opinion, Infernus is one of the coolest heroes in the game. It always has been. Like the way he's designed, his voice lines, his personality. He's like a bartender in New York and all that stuff. He's actually a bartender in New York, but he used to kill people or some shit. Anyway, really, really sick character in my opinion. Okay, next up we have Ivy. One thing I'll say about Ivy right now is that the new Spirit Ivy ult build is something. Ivy took a big hit when they finally fixed the thing where you can't just fly the urn in like 25 meters per second anymore. But right now, this is one of the heroes where you can buy like 10 spirit items and just like fly around, toss down. It's basically really hard to push the base against Ivy. And because of the change to the base design where there's like high ground and slopes and all those things, she's really good at defending the base with Kutsu bombs. And she really benefits from like a spirit burn and the fact that you can stack more spirit items than before, because when she's standing far away, she can use all these abilities from a safe distance, including her ult, and makes her tough to deal with. And on top of that, she's actually got a pretty good gun. Like, I think her gun, a lot of other heroes' guns got nerfed more than Ivy's. I still haven't tried it myself yet, but I've played against a few Ivys who go like Tesla bullets and then Siphon bullets and stuff. I think that's probably next on the to-do list pretty soon to try some Ivy builds. I think she's in a pretty solid spot. Let me see what her win rates are actually. So she's B tier overall. I'm gonna assume in higher ranks she goes up. Yeah. So in Ascendant she's 54. In Ascendant Plus she's 53. And Eternus she's 53. Okay, so this is back to like how I talked about some of the other heroes before who kind of are like pilot issues a little bit. I'm gonna assume that a lot of the lower ranks, a lot of people just play Gun Ivy, and some of them maybe don't quite know how to build her because it might not be as straightforward as like, let's say, Infernus or Wraith. But it is very interesting to see how like the win rates go up as you get higher in elo, which I think is because of how good she is at defending the base, how good she is at dealing with objectives. You have the stone form for the mid-boss deal, and with like with a lot of spirit items, your Katsu Bomb really just can cover the entire mid-boss pit as well. I think it's a really good hero, and I think I'll put her right up here with Infernus. Okay, next up we have Kelvin. Kelvin has been good for a long time, especially I noticed in Deadlock Fight Night. He was actually first picked quite a lot and first banned quite a lot. He has always been one of the best rescue beam buyers because he can run around up in the skies and hook people out of danger. He gets definitely benefits from the new healing tempo item. He has a low cooldown frost grenade that heals targets, so he can also use that to just proc a healing tempo. Also, interestingly, for those who have been watching the stream quite a bit, he also has a pretty insane beam damage now, which is weird because like that's the one thing I was surprised about, because beam Kelvin hasn't been good for like 4 to 5 months. It used to be really good way back in the early days of the playtest pre-NDA because the beam would actually disarm. But the beam hasn't really done that much damage ever since. And I think the reason why is because of items like Spirit Burn, Escalating Exposure, Decay, and the fact that this is one of the heroes that really wanted to stack more than just 4 spirit items, because when you play on your ice path, that is almost like an effective defensive ability. So imagine this way, if you buy Spirit Burn plus Greater Expansion plus you have a max stacked Trophy Collector, you can stand so far away with your beam and do damage that you don't even need armors, because the fall off range of everyone else's guns plus the fire rate slow that you'll have from the beam is enough to like just out heal it with Spirit Lifesteal in most cases. So the beam build is definitely back. I also saw a really fun build, which I think is called like the Furnace Kelvin, which is essentially just making the dome into like a pool of fire. So you get alchemical fire, you get Scourge, you get escalating, you get duration extender, and anyone who hops into the ult just gets cooked by all the damage over time effects. He also has a very high health gain per boon, and I actually think that this might be the first time I'm putting Kelvin in S tier. I just think this hero is super solid. I've also played him quite a bit myself right now. He's really fun. He has a lot of build options. He's very popular in pro play. I think he is pretty hard to solo queue with. I think that in an ideal world, you would want to have at least a carry to duo with. So I'll walk you guys through an ideal scenario. You are Kelvin, you're laning with an Infernus or a Haze or a Wraith or any carry that likes to just sit in the side lane, even Shiv. And then you set up a lot of early game pressure with the beam. Once you get level 2 beam, if you have an Infernus with level 2 flame dash and Kelvin with level 2 beam, you can literally 100 to 0 someone so fast. Because they both deal, like there's a lot of synergy there. It's like a double slow damage over time that is really hard to deal with. And then what you do, and this is only for pubs, not for pro play. I don't want to, I think that Trophy Collector is an item that is overhated. I think people are just like saying it's bad without like seeing where it could be good. That would be like an excellent time to like get an early Trophy Collector after you've taken down the Guardian in your lane. Don't leave the lane before you've taken down the Guardian, by the way, because then you're eventually just going to lose yours. But if you manage to get enough pressure to take down an early Guardian, buy a Trophy Collector, and start rotating and setting up ganks in the other lanes, you can build up those stacks so fast. And I've had a few games where I've done this, and I've basically almost not jungled, almost not stayed in the lane at all, and still have top souls by the end of the game, just because you have like 14 stacks of Trophy Collector before 20 minutes. And I think this is one of the best heroes to buy a Trophy Collector on. My main recommendations is usually Paradox, Kelvin, and Mo, because they all don't really rely on items to set up kills or assists. You can slow them, you can swap them, you can Mo ult them. All these heroes, they just need to be at the right place at the right time. And that's when Trophy Collector is great. It is not great on someone like Haze, who really needs to hit her power spike timings to be able to still be relevant and do damage. But yeah, Kelvin is super fun. I'm glazing these heroes a lot right now, but honestly, guys, I don't know, like some of you might have been taking a break from Deadlock and stuff, but the game is so fun to play right now. I'm playing like 10, 15 hours every day. And when I get bored of playing 7, then I play Infernus. When I get bored of Infernus, I play Beam Kelvin. And when I get bored of Beam Kelvin, maybe I'll cat max on Calico. Like there's so much build potential, so many options, because so many different items are its own niche that creates its own playstyle, which is why this game is 5 times better than Marvel Rivals. Sorry. Anyway, next up we have Viscous. And Viscous to me is in a weird spot, and it always has been in a weird spot. Because some games, you end up playing against Goober. And then you say to yourself, wow, I don't know how the developers would ever allow this hero to make it through development. Because what happens is they will buy 10 spirit items plus Phantom Strike and Warpstone. And then this is like the definition of a hero that feels useless and broken at the same time. And I don't know. I have to just look at the statistics because I'm so biased. Because when you get those fucking Viscous one-tricks on the enemy team, it is so annoying. But there is one new item that counters Viscous. 2 new items that counters Viscous really hard. I'm gonna give you a pause. I'm gonna see if people in chat are knowers. There's 2 new items that counters Viscous pretty hard. Okay, there's 3 items. I didn't think about rebuttal. Armor piercing rounds, because you shred through his 60% bullet resistance while he's rolling around on the ball. 2, capacitor to dispel his cube. And 3, if you have rebuttal against Viscous and you really lock in so you actually can parry the puddle punches, Viscous takes damage. He gets hit by the puddle punch. So that's a pretty interesting one. But I'm curious, now I want to check the win rates on this hero because it is a hard hero to play. An Ascendant Plus, it's 49. What about if I press everything? Yeah, as expected, his win rate goes down in lower tiers. That kind of makes sense because it's a hard hero to pilot. And I also feel biased because now that I've been playing Infernus recently, I don't have that much issues with Viscous as before because he still doesn't like getting hit by a bunch of debuffs. I think I just really hated Viscous when I was playing Bebop, but then decided to murder Bebop anyway, so it's whatever. I know Goober has been complaining that Viscous's gun is pretty weak right now. Also, the new Arcane Surge, 1600 souls for like tons of duration, spirit power, and range is like massive on this hero. But I'm still gonna put him here. I don't know, man. Like, I think that this hero has like an insane skill gap, but in a lot of the times it doesn't bother me as much. Does that make sense? Like, you'll have the off game where you run into the Lord of fucking one-tricking and they just absolutely dominate you with Viscous. But then you have some other games where like they will just cube a teammate to save them and then they just die after the cube anyway. So that's like a little bit of a confusing one to me. Then we have Yamato. I hate Yamato. A lot of that hate is built up from a year of trying to play Bebop into that hero. She is a hero that wants to do a lot of burst damage. So I do think that this higher health pool, slower time to kill thing kind of hurts her a little bit. She's not necessarily someone who buys toxic bullets or any of those things. You could probably get Spirit Burn on her. You definitely buy Heal Bane. But I think this hero has been in a good spot in a long time. I think that her ult, especially with her ult being a Dispel too, like she basically has a built-in debuff remover, built-in Colossus, and built-in Unstoppable, which is a lot because there are a lot of debuffs going around right now. I do think that she's a little bit hard to place. I'm actually curious. I am using these win rates a little bit more now than before, by the way, and that is because in the past I've gotten a lot of criticism for like not taking win rates into account. So now I'm always trying to check win rates first before making like an assessment and then see if anything changes. Because for instance, what you can see here is that Yamato, in Eternus, Yamato is 47%. So she's the opposite. Does she get worse the higher you go? There she's 49. And then if I press normal, she's 50. Interesting. So she's a little bit of a noob stomper. I guess that kind of checks out because lower elo players might not be able to deal with stuff like buying curse and silence glyphs and stuff to stop her from ulting, or just buying bullet resist and spirit resist shred in general because she gets tons of spirit and bullet resist in her ults. Interesting. So where does that lead us? I think that she, in a way, I think we put her up here, maybe after Abrams. I think she's in a good spot. I think Yamato is one of those heroes that when this hero is too strong, then the game becomes really unfun. Like, I don't know. It's something about like being hit by an unstoppable hero that is unkillable. If that is like, if that hero is slightly overbalanced, then the game becomes really miserable to play. Which leaves us with Mirage. And Mirage has always been an interesting hero in the regards that it's still the only hero with a global presence on his ultimates. So you can AFK farm in the side lane or the jungle, and you can TP to the team fight. We've talked a lot about this on previous tier lists, but I think it's important to always mention it as well because it is a very essential part of why this hero is very strong. Because the usual scenario is that you want to use Mirage to drag someone to one of the side lanes. For instance, you push like the walker on the side, and then someone has to rotate over to defend that walker. So now Mirage has pulled a player over to the walker, and then he can use his ult to TP into the team fight, making it a 6v5. So he is one of the heroes with the strongest global presence. One thing I forgot to touch on earlier too, by the way, is that Ricochet has been buffed a lot. So Ricochet was an item that wasn't really an item for a long time. But in this patch, Ricochet is actually pretty good, and I think that that's good for Mirage. Some Mirage builds want to focus a lot on putting on debuffs. If you max her 3 and you focus a lot on like toxic bullets. I think it's hard to like, I think Mirage, I actually want to check. I have a theory that Mirage gets higher win rates as you go up in skill level. Where is he? He's all the way down in C tier here. But I wonder what happens when you go to like, let's say Phantom Plus. Does it go upwards? Yeah, now it's 48%. And you go to Ascendant. Now he's 49%. Yeah, so that's kind of as expected. Mirage suffers from a few things. First of all, he's an incredibly bad jungler. He literally has like nothing for him to jungle. You can just like toss your scarabs on them and stuff. His jungling is atrocious. So it kind of forces him to stay in the lane, which is kind of what you want Mirage to be because he's got that ultimate ability to go somewhere else. But the problem with that is that I don't think Mirage is necessarily the type of carry you would want to have the most farm on your team. You would much rather give that to Wraith or Infernus or Seven. So then you're like, depending on the team comp, then I'm like, he's not a great jungler, but I would rather give my solo farm to Infernus or Seven or Wraith. And I think that's maybe what puts him in a little bit of an awkward spot. I am going to put him here, there, in the middle of the pack of beats here. I think one thing to remember overall is that the power level between these heroes can be very minimal for them to jump a full tier. I think there are, of course, outliers. Like if you look at Bebop's win rates right now, it's atrocious. It's 40% in Eternus. It's 44% overall. And like I mentioned earlier, he's a much easier hero to play than Holliday and Sinclair, which is why it's very alarming. Because Holliday and Sinclair and Pocket, these heroes will always have low win rates because they are harder to pilot. They require more active items. They require more quick decision making. And there's going to be a lot of feeding in the lower ranks on these kind of heroes. Same with Paradox too. And some of them needs more organized play as well. Bebop isn't necessarily like that. He used to be the hero that hooks someone and kind of just like explodes them, which is why you can see here like his pick rate change. If you look at all the pick rate changes here, you can notice that Wraith is one of the big winners, 10% up across the board. If you look at Bebop, 16.6% less Bebop picks. That is like the biggest change out of every hero in this entire batch. So that concludes my tier list. I think it's safe to say that Bebop is the loser of this patch and Wraith is the winner of this patch, which can be easy to see, especially in the pick rate change. But overall, I think it's a super fun patch to play on. I'll be streaming every day on Twitch, so feel free to click the link down in the description or comments to come hang out. We're making new builds every day on stream. And I hope you guys enjoy the tier list, and feel free to let me know what you think about the current hero balance. I think you guys have to remember that we just had a massive item patch, which means that some things are going to be unbalanced. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts on what you think. And I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.